welcome to Wholesome Roots. In today's video, I'm going to tell you about chanterelle mushrooms, how to harvest, how to preserve, how to store, how to cook, all you need to know. Alright, I'm going to harvest some of these chanterelles. Some of them have already started to kind of fall apart, and some of them have been picked up by roosters, and some of them have been stepped on. So I'm going to start picking them before they're gone. So anyway, I was going to make a note here. It is very important that you have a professional identify your mushroom in person before you decide that you're going to harvest something. If you are new or unexperienced with mushrooms, you should never identify by a photo on the internet alone. That is not a proper identification. There are so many more steps involved, including spore prints and the like. But having a trained professional, a trained expert, verify with their own eyes in person is extremely important. So I just want to make sure you note that, and to remember, do not experiment with wild mushrooms. There are many that have lookalikes that are poisonous, and I would not want anybody to be harmed by any advice that I give. So therefore, I never tell anybody when they send me a picture of a mushroom whether or not it's edible or not, unless it is extreme rare circumstances where the person already has experience with the mushrooms, or it's one of the edible mushrooms that has no poisonous lookalikes, so there's no risk involved. But if there's anything that's even remotely close to a family full of poisonous mushrooms, I'm not going to be the one that says it's edible. So I just want to point that out and make sure that you guys are very careful, and that if you know anybody in your area, that if you can bring the mushroom to them and have them identify, then that's a good way to learn more. As you see, this golden chanterelle has already started to fade in its color, so I know it's declining, and this is the biggest it's going to get. So I just cut it off right at ground level, leaving behind any mycelium that is attached to the base of the mushroom, because I would cut that off anyway when I went to cook it. So these will be used today. So I just cut it off right at ground level, leaving behind any mycelium that is attached to the base of the mushroom, because I would cut that off anyway when I went to cook it. So these will be used today. You see the way the beautiful ridges are in this. That is one of the great identifying characteristics of the chanterelle. Those will always run down the stem, or the stipe. Proper mushroom terminology, sorry. I say stem quite often because I'm often talking to people that, well, so far so good. Most of them are funky looking, but I just had to get one out from underneath the trampoline. And then I was just going to show you. Way over under that oak tree is where I harvested the first ones that I said were much further from their original location. Way over underneath that pecan, along that fence line, is where the original chanterelles were ever found in previous years. So we've come a long ways away from there, and I just found 3 beautiful ones here, and I wanted to show you this one because that is much more beautiful and what it's supposed to look like for a golden chanterelle. Isn't that gorgeous? I love it. Fresh mushrooms should be stored in the refrigerator soon after you harvest them. You shouldn't wash them before you refrigerate them. What we like to do is use a paper bag. Some people will take some paper towels and line a bowl with them and place the mushrooms into that and get them into the refrigerator that way. That works fine too. It's just best not to have the mushrooms touching against plastic or glass, because they'll sweat in that area and it'll cause a little bit of a sliminess in the location that they're touching. So paper bag is a great way to store them if you're going to be using them soon, or line a bowl with paper towels is going to work as well. So if you've gathered some mushrooms that look like they have little holes in them, there's probably some bugs living in there. Now, some people just toss those and don't eat them. I'm not that scared of a little bit of bugs being in there. But one good trick to do is to take a bowl of water and put the mushrooms in it and let them soak in that for a little bit, and the worms will usually crawl out of the mushrooms and into the water. So it helps prevent you from eating too many bugs. But you'll know as soon as you put them into the skillet if you've left behind a few, because they usually crawl out at that point too. So no need to be scared of these bugs. They can't hurt you. It's just extra protein, but it is kind of a gross factor. So you can either toss those, and I recommend not tossing them just into the garbage, but put them in a location that you think chanterelles might grow, and that will actually spread the spores and possibly make new mushrooms grow next time. So if you happen to harvest quite a bit of chanterelles, which can happen sometimes if you get lucky, you may want to use some of them right away, but you may wonder, what do I do to preserve the rest? The two best ways of storing mushrooms for later use is dehydrating. If you have a dehydrator, use your dehydrator and just dehydrate them till they're dry, and then store them in an airtight jar or baggie and you're good. And then you can just rehydrate them whenever you want to use them. Also, the other way is to actually cook them a little bit in butter or oil and freeze them. You don't have to cook them all the way, because when you defrost them and cook them again, you'll be usually heating them up to cook them again. So those are the two best ways that I've used in the past. A lot of mushrooms, once you have them dehydrated, they can be ground up into a powder, and you can add that powder to dishes like soups and stuff, and you can even do that for people who don't necessarily like mushroom texture, because a lot of people who don't like mushrooms, they usually say it's because of the texture. So dehydrating and grinding it up is a way to get it into a soup or other forms of food. All right, if your chanterelles are in really good shape like these are, all you need to do is just a quick rinse of water to remove any debris or leaves. I had a couple of pieces of grass and leaves stuck to them, so just to remove that extra dirt that may be attached still. And that's it. All I have to do now is cut them up and add them to my spaghetti. Then I just melt some butter in my cast iron skillet. If it's not salted butter, you're going to want to add a little bit of salt, because that helps the mushrooms release their juices and cook well. So once my butter is melted in the pan, I'm going to go ahead and add my chopped up mushrooms. So as you stir them, you'll see that there's water being released by the mushrooms. That's pretty normal. So just keep stirring them until they're nice and well done. Yum yum. Not too well done, but just perfect. Oh yeah, now we're talking. I'm just about right. I cooked off most of that extra moisture that it was releasing. And at this point, if I was not serving it with my spaghetti, I would want to add garlic and cook it in just a little bit till the garlic was cooked, not browned too much, because garlic cooks fast, and then a little bit of white wine to deglaze the pan, and I would just eat it. But we are adding it to our organic spaghetti, so we are going to have that right on top. We don't need any garlic or white wine with it, because the spaghetti will have all the flavor, and we want to taste these chanterelles. We have another batch of chanterelles that we got from a friend's house that are pretty buggy, so we're going to be soaking them really good before we use them and seeing how they come out. I hope you enjoyed today's video all about chanterelles, and if you have any further questions, please message me down below in the comments. Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time on Wholesome Roots.